So there we are. So we're recording. This will simply capture my image with Robin's and nobody else's, if you were to be visible. Here we are. So good afternoon, good day. Topic today is a British color vowel chart. Purple shirt. Certainly. Certainly. We're not sure yet. Yeah. This has been a topic that's been brewing for several years. We've had users contact us on occasion, I would say for the past 5 years, saying, what about the British vowels? What are you going to do? And so for a while back, we started brainstorming what would the color vowel chart look like with British vowels? How much would change and how much would stay the same? Dr. Barr has been involved with this process throughout, and it's been something that some of you have been involved with, like Cyn. Thanks for voicing in early on so that we knew if we were headed in the right direction. But
turns out that banana is not banana for Cyn, it's banana.
Banana, exactly. So just those front vowels are always interesting. We're going to start with a quick review of the North American color vowel chart. This is the standard 4th edition chart that we now use and distribute. It's been out since 1999 was its first iteration when I made my first chart at University of Maryland, and it's evolved a bit, but really it hasn't changed a great deal in some aspects. It's a color-based graphic organizer.
And it's better than ever.
Yeah. But it's to say that the function of color is definitely, evident. You can see color, and yet it's not a visual color experience. This is a system where the keyword phrases, or what we call the anchor phrases, each feature the vowel sound that they represent. So green, T, both contain E. And so now we have a name for that sound without having to write a phonetic symbol. We just call that the green sound.
Or we don't have to call it long E or long I,
right.
Or the E sound, because what if you can't hear the difference between E and I? So now green helps us identify
exactly.
it with one term.
Especially helpful when you get to the next one, silver, pin, I. Our learners often cannot perceive the I in silver and pin, and they perceive it more like the E in green and T. So having a name for it is extremely helpful. It's certainly the beginning of both a conversation about what one can perceive or what one has difficulty producing, but it's also a way then of teaching. So if you have names for things, we believe it's easier to teach those things. So that's the silver sound.
Yeah. So even if you can't hear the difference and produce the difference yet, you can at least categorize the words into 2 groups instead of a single group until you do get the ability to distinguish them and produce them.
And so right off the bat, we have a way of dealing with allophony, that allophonic experience that our learners have and that teachers are often unaware of, that leads to this listen harder moment, or the moment of, I'm going to repeat it and you're going to repeat it, and we'll get stuck in this place.
And somebody will cry.
And someone cries eventually, exactly. So a lot of this is motivated by me wanting to find a way to teach pronunciation without tears. It's like handwriting without tears. Good. So gray and day both contain A. Red
dress,
black
cat,
Now my turn. I'll do the phrase and you do the sound.
No, we're all do it together. In fact, you do it too with us, okay?
Okay, all of you.
Olive sock, ah. Auburn dog, aw.
That's a non-native production right there. That's not my dialect.
Turquoise toy, oi. Rose coat, o. Wooden hook, blue moon, oo.
Back up through the middle. We're going to start here above olive at a cup of mustard,
purple shirt,
And then on the sides, we've got our 2 big movers. We've got brown cow,
ow,
and white tie, I. There we go. So the 15 vowel sounds of North American English. I'm going to be sure we can see our chat here. Again, curious to make sure we know if somebody is asking a question or making a comment. Okay, Great. And so the premise here is not only do we now have names for the vowel sounds of English, I mean North American English, but we also have a way to identify the peak stressed vowel sound in a given word or a given phrase, right? And so if we can take some long words just as useful words, how about a word like university? University would be a purple shirt word, right? So
purple shirt, university.
Right. And if we take linguistics, what color is that word, Robin?
Silver pin linguistics.
And phonology.
Olive sock phonology.
Okay, so you get the idea that we identify the primary stress. We don't right away worry about the secondary stress if there is one, nor do we concern ourselves with clear unstressed vowels or unstressed reduced vowels, because the overarching philosophy of the color vowel approach is that we're seeking the simplest, most learner-friendly way to convey the prioritization of English, how English works, that we organize the rhythm of English around the peak sounds, and those are the peak colors.
So the primary stress is in English is going to be, well, most dialects of English is going to be much longer. It's also louder and has a different intonation. However, most books don't explain that the length is more important and the rhythm is more important for most listeners to identify. And
even if the books do explain that, I think the fact that it's a book is largely what gets in the way. Is as much as I love so many pronunciation books that are just really quite good, and yet the fact that it's printed doesn't help us really learn that. It blocks itself. Also,
one issue with English stress is that for a lot of other languages, either they have predictable stress, which means that it's not phonemically salient, because they don't hear it, right? Or when the language does have a stress, they don't necessarily indicate it by length,
right?
The way English does.
Pitch, maybe.
Pitch and loudness. Volume.
Yeah. Amazing. Instead of amazing. All right. And so with this, we start to identify just the primary stress. And of course, the chart is there as learners ask questions about the secondary stress, or as they notice, more importantly, as they notice different features of a long word or of a phrase, they can ask, what's going on here? What's going on with graduate and graduate? And we have the chart there to say, okay, both are black words, graduate and graduate.
Graduate.
Yet the verb and the noun have a slightly different final syllable sound in there. And so we can say, well, yeah, it's unstressed, and yet it's about this sort of crossbar I schwa behavior that would be right up here.
Graduate.
Right, where a cup of mustard and silver pin meet. That would be graduate. And then there's graduate, and graduate would be a gray unstressed final syllable there. And yet both are categorized as black words using the graphic organizer that we call the color vowel organizer.
And the color vowel organizer is important for the students, because when they're taking their homework home and they're practicing the word, what is the most important for comprehensibility, for the listener to understand them, is that they get the stress in the right place, and that the vowel, the stressed syllable, is the correct vowel. So if you're trying to distinguish between misery and Missouri,
exactly,
that's an obvious place where you have to be able to not only get the right stress, but also get the right vowel.
So misery is a silver pin misery, and Missouri
for me is purple shirt Missouri. It might be wooden hook Missouri for some people.
Oh, okay, Missouri. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So if you're new to it, and we haven't had you in the room before, I just wanted to kind of start with that. Do we have any questions that have come up so far before we move forward to show the unveil?
I just wanted to jump in there. Missouri is blue moon for me.
There we go. Can you say it again?
Missouri.
Wait, say it again. I'm hearing wood and...
Really?
Do it again.
Oh, yeah, Missouri.
Missouri.
It's somewhere between purple and blue and maybe,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So Missouri.
Missouri.
So what's nice about that, and this is what we love about it's what we love about the Color Vowel Chart, is that we can look at those variations and say, look how close they are to each other. They actually touch each other on the chart. And I think, thank you for reminding me to mention that, is if I say Missouri and you say Missouri, or
and I say Missouri,
these are all bordering one another precisely because the Color Vowel Chart is organized in the same fashion as the actual vocal tract itself.
That's true. Yeah.
So if we come along, we have E, I'm using my pointer here.
High front vowels.
High front vowels.
Yeah. So the left-hand column is unrounded front vowels, including the diphthong I, which starts down at olive.
So yeah, and if we came up from olive, I. Okay.
The back, the third column, the right-hand column, is rounded vowels. So we have O, and brown also fits there because it ends rounded.
Right.
All right. And then up the middle is, you could either call it central or unrounded back, depending on your phonemic system, but you start with olive, and then depending on how you pronounce the R, could be rounded or not rounded.
And so this is a key point of interest to us today, and why we're starting this conversation.
I'm worried about purple. I'll put it that way.
Exactly.
Purple worried. Yes. Purple shirt worried. I'm purple shirt
The question will be, and we've already done some preliminary testing with speakers of Australian English and British English, South African English, to know that purple and shirt do seem to behave consistently with one another. And that'll be sort of the first big question for as we start to explore the possibility of a British color vowel chart, is that each of these anchor phrases have to perform sufficiently. You can't have, it's not okay if purple and shirt don't contain the same vowel sound for a given speaker of British English.
Which is what we ran into with Auburn Dog.
Right.
Because for me, Auburn and Dog have the same vowel. Karen, they also have the same vowel, but it's a different vowel. It's olive. But we discovered that, in fact, for many dialects of British English, it's Auburn Dog, which are not the same.
Right. So we had to find a different phrase, and we're not giving it away yet, but you're going to see.
I always struggle when I use the American one, right down there.
The lower back.
Sock, right?
So,
olive sock, yeah.
So is this you, Cynthia? Is this Cynthia?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So Auburn and Dog, for me, they're perfectly
totally different.
Good. So we'll find that. We'll find a new solution for that. So we had some solutions with Auburn and Dog, but purple shirt continues to be our main, we'll call it a
challenge,
a healthy worry, or a point of inquiry that we're excited about. Let me answer a question here from Carolyn, or Caroline. I'm not sure if it's Carolyn.
She said.
Carrie. Okay. Hi, Carrie.
Or maybe Carrie. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Wonderful. She said, can you explain, just explain again how you would get a student to produce a schwa rather than a full vowel sound. Good. And so I will refer you to, if you all haven't seen it, and Carolyn in particular, if you haven't seen my Color Vowel yoga video, it's a strange little animal. It's old, but it works. And in it, about minute 8, I think, I move into a second section that I call the Schwa Kerr. And so we can be in the center with Schwa, and basically convey to students through their bodies that they move from a resting place in the mouth, in a schwa position, that we move out into color, let's call it, and into the stressed location. And so with a cup of mustard, the and the of a cup of mustard are representing, of course, schwa. And the in cup and the in mustard are
representing the turned V, which is the official name of it. I sometimes call it a carrot.
Carrot.
Some people call it
upside down V.
Well, it's they had a gang sign name for it, but I've forgotten what it was.
Oh, let's not use that. And tell me, does that phonetic symbol have a name from Greek?
That's it. No, it doesn't. But the official IPA name for it is turned V.
Nice.
your upside down V is not official. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we start with a cup of mustard and that's why it's bigger than everything else. It's a point of discovery. We wait for students to say, and they do. They'll ask, why is it bigger than everything else? You say, good noticing. It's bigger than everything else because it is the most frequently used sound in spoken English.
And they go, what?
Huh?
No. Yeah.
And then you add in this awareness that there are many times that we consciously could produce it or say that we produce it in a word like bus or mustard. But we also produce that sound a great deal unconsciously as schwa, as the thing that happens to vowels.
Unstressed. Many unstressed vowels.
Many unstressed vowels.
Sofa, comma. Those are the
right.
Prototypical examples.
About. Right. Yeah. And it also allows us not only to talk about sort of schwa in the abstract, and here I'm subtly drawing schwa with my pointer. It allows us to see where crossbar I happens. Mm-hmm. So a good example of that would be
in my plurals, like roses.
Roses. Okay.
As opposed to roses.
The zzz of roses is not a classic schwa. Roses. That would be like the woman named Rosa who owns a house, Rosa's house. Yeah. But it's the roses color, or the plural. The roses are red.
You'll often see this transcribed as if it were silver pin, but in fact, it's more centralized because it's unstressed.
So we can start to really think about the borders of each of these colors.
And notice that they all touch. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. So all of the other colors touch a cup of mustard precisely because any one of them can reduce into schwa, or some variety of schwa, the schwa concept or the reduction concept. And so crossbar I would fit here without having to name it that, without having to write that very intimidating symbol on the board. And students can see, yeah, it sounds silver. And it's the part where a cup of mustard touches silver. That's the reduction. Okay. Mm. And so we do a combination of using the chart to talk about what happens, and then also using the body to explore what is going on in the chart and to bring it into an awareness.
I tell my students, imagine that your tongue is 3 feet long, and then try to figure out, okay, where is your tongue pointing when you say E, and it's up at the upper left there, so E, and then open your mouth, E, yeah.
Yeah.
So they love it. It really works.
It really works.
It's remarkable.
It's astounding. And Color Vowel Yoga is the video. It's in YouTube, and that's a good place to go and look there. And join me again, because we'll talk about schwa. In fact, I have a talk about schwa later, just early May. I have a little scheduled bit on a cup of mustard. So just take a look for that too in the mailings that I've been sending out. All right. Let's continue. And Carolyn, does that answer your question a little bit? Let us know. Okay. I'm looking back here before we do the unveil. So we have Carolyn, from the UK, Carrie, right? We've got Cyn, who speaks Australian English. With the two of you in the room and some Americans, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. You know that we needed to do something different with Auburn. And we also had this other problem, and that other problem is an additional vowel.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I argued for years with you for my bonus vowel for Auburn until I finally convinced you that it actually existed.
I want the bonus vowel. I got the bonus vowel.
Bonus vowel, yeah. But now the British also want their own bonus vowel.
So I should say the very first chart that I created was a chart without Auburn Dog in it at all. And I always like to sort of just point out how neat it is that I can talk about that I can even say it didn't have Auburn Dog.
Because she didn't used to be able to say Auburn Dog.
Nor could any, but it's to say that we even have a dialogue around this now. That I walked into a room a couple TESOL conventions ago, and I walked into a dinner of pronunciation people, a special dinner. And so I walked in, and the first thing I heard at this table, where I didn't recognize anybody because we don't know each other except online. And so I heard this gentleman say to somebody next to him, "Oh, well, I don't have Auburn in my dialect." And I,
yes, Yes, we've arrived.
I was like, who are you? And to realize that if that's the thing on my epitaph, she gave us Auburn Dog.
Yeah, hey. I mean, how
ironic is that?
Much better than saying, I don't have open O. I mean, what does that mean?
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But to be able to, I mean, the irony is, of course, that I don't have Auburn Dog in my dialect, but that by having created the first chart that doesn't have Auburn, that rather had this handy R control vowel orange door, and then moving into when we started publishing this, because there was so much interesting demand for it, with help of Robin and several of our American University TESOL students, we realized that Auburn Dog had a place on the chart, even though I don't have it. And now, in the past few years, there's this question of this additional vowel. So let's take a look at our...
I should point out that the British vowel system actually had all these vowels to begin with, and the American system has merged them.
Right.
Just so you know.
Right. So I'm from the West, and I look at everything as having an additional this and additional that, as if as I move east, I have to pick up another suitcase and another backpack. But in fact, it was already fully packed in the British Isles, and as people went west,
it's an interesting way.
They put one bag in front of inside of another, let's say,
okay,
and packed them together.
Yeah, they
and
merged them. Yeah,
they did not throw them off to the side.
No, they just
incorporated. And so it's a matter of perspective, but it's a very good reminder, Robin, that what's really happening here is I'm rediscovering. Ooh. Okay. So here's a comparison, and then we'll look at the chart all by itself in a minute. But up in the left side here, the left corner, you have the original, like our chart, the North American chart, and down below, highlighting the part that's different is the British English prototype chart. And so you already see, if you look at Blue Moon, Wooden Hook, Rose Coat, Turquoise Toy down to Auburn, and here, olive, we have a change. Yeah. So if you basically from Black Cat onward in the British prototype chart, we have something different happening. And so I love talking about this. Robin, you want to tell us what's happening with right here, starting with olive in the North American chart.
So North American chart has olive sock, which is an open vowel, which in most dialects is unrounded, ah. The dialects that merge the two back vowels, olive and Auburn, in North American English, may sometimes round it in allophonic ways. I know yours does. Say doll.
Doll.
No, that's not how you say it.
Doll.
Yeah. So Karen happens to have phonetically the the rounded version of Auburn Dog, but it's not. She's not aware of it because it's predictable. If you're from New England, Boston area, for example, you may merge the and the as the rounded vowel So in Boston, you might say caught instead of cot, except before R, where you would have the classic pakya, kan, havid, ya, the front ah. Right? Okay. So that's an example where the merger happens slightly differently. The dialects of American English that distinguish olive sock and Auburn Dog may have different kinds of Auburn. My Auburn is about in that spot, Auburn. It's basically a low back vowel. In fact, it's the same place as olive, except with rounding. Ah. I don't have to move anything but my lips.
Okay.
But if you're from New York, for example, your Auburn extends all the way up to where Rose Coat begins. And so you'll say, Auburn, coffee, which is part of people's stereotypes about the New York accent.
Right. So there's, I think it's worth pointing out that the chart, we don't really change it a lot. I suppose someday in the future with technology, we'll be able to sort of drag these things into different places to talk about the phonetic versus the phonemic.
I would love to have a way of recording my own vowel chart. I mean, we used to have the VisiPitch to do that, so we could see where our different vowels are on the chart, and then say, "Oh, look, mine is higher than yours." Right. That's fine. But as long as we have a name for it, and these are the distinctions that people in North America make. The pronunciation is less important, but it does help the students identify where in the mouth is a safe place to pronounce this sound.
Exactly. So some people's Auburn is down here close to Olive, and some people's Auburn Dog
Extends all the way up.
Are down here, or up here in Rose Cove, Auburn.
So now, take a look at the British chart. The olive sock of my dialect in most British dialects will be the rounded version, olive sock, a low back vowel. And so where's the the open It's a different set of words: tomato, cot, father, palm, calm. I have a list of them. This is the in the classic Wells system. It's usually described as a long vowel because many of them are the result of compensatory lengthening with the followed by an R sound. So cot.
So the question I have, I'm sort of start off with a little bit of interactive stuff. With tomato, cot, if we're in a British, not that I have the greatest British accent, but tomato, cot, does that function for everybody in the room right now? Carrie, in particular you? Do tomato and cot have the same vowel sound? That would be my question. And same for you, Cyn. Yes, it works for you. Sorry, go ahead.
It totally works for me. Tomato, cot.
Yeah, in fact, I think you were the one who came up with it, Cyn. The question I have, which may not be answerable at this point, is that with or without the R? Because I'm trying to figure out, okay, for me, cart is also that vowel, but I've got an R added to it. Are you perceiving the R when you say cot or not?
Yeah, it's totally without the R. R.
Yeah.
Tomato, cot.
Cot.
It's really R.
And is the vowel in cot, is it longer than the vowel in tomato?
Longer in time.
Yes, it is.
And do you notice that? So you wouldn't ever think that tomato had an R in it, but cot does.
Right.
So Carrie says, yes, it works for me. The R doesn't make any difference. You have the long with a lot of words with no R. So staff or bath, for example.
Yeah. So if you spelled bath as BARTH, would it be the same? If
there were a barth.
Yeah,
bath.
Cyn, what do you think?
Yeah, it'd be the same. Bath.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, good. So that was one of my questions. The same with farther and father. Are they the same?
Father.
The way you say it.
They are for me. Father and father.
And Carrie, for you, father, farther and father, father, are they the same? Okay, we're curious. So just so you know,
So I do just want to add a little tidbit there. So as you can imagine, if father and father sound the same, then you can potentially have some communicative breakdowns.
Right.
The way we work around it is we don't say father for distance, we say further.
That's useful.
Yeah. Nice.
Right?
Go further.
We don't say father, we say further.
Yeah. So it's like Southerners will say stick pin and ink pen because they merge pen and pin.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. So basically, the kinds of things we're concerned with when we make any change to the chart, or in this case, make a new variety of chart, is to make sure that phrase is going to function. Mm-hmm. And so we're curious now, if we say, okay, now we have Cyn and Carrie, we say, yes. Good. How far out can we, I call it out, who else in the world that considers themselves to be a speaker of a British English or Commonwealth English would say, no, those are different vowel sounds. And so it's a question of how far does it generalize? Well,
I would worry that the people who don't have R drops, so for example, the north of England, Scotland, Ireland, is that going to work for them? Tomato, cart. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll be perceived as the same.
The same vowel. Way that cart for me is olive. Yeah.
But okay. I think that there are places where tomato is tomato. So I forget which I have.
And we recognize we always recognize there's no way to represent everybody's dialect and variety of English in one chart. Recognize, it's not a battle we're going to win. Let me just, I'm going to, yeah, good.
So,
and so, neither are we naively saying we're looking for the holy grail of the perfect phrase that will work for everybody. But at the same time, we would like to see how broadly we can be accessible to a number of different speakers.
Another candidate for the tomato cot vowel was raspberry tot.
Yes.
How do you feel about that one?
Raspberry tot. So that would be
raspberry tot. I love it.
Yeah, tomato also has a nice image, but raspberry tart is just really delicious.
Oh, hey guys, for the bread.
Who's here? Somebody's talking.
Edna.
Hi, Edna.
I'm sorry, I sound like I'm running a marathon. I'm actually walking to the building where I'm going to teach now.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. So I just want to talk about something very quickly. I have 2 minutes. You're talking about the variety of, by the way, I'm Brazilian, so my variety is my own, right? So you're talking about the differences and stuff. And then are you guys familiar with the Vowel Cat? Have you heard of it?
Yeah, Vowel Cat out of University of Ohio, I believe.
Ohio University, yeah. Ohio University, yeah, actually here. It was developed here. And one thing we were talking about,
lost you.
or presenting at conferences was the fact that even, you can't still?
We've got you. We can hear you now.
Okay. So the fact that even native speakers of English, American English, could not reach the vowels as they were placed in the chart. So you would have standard American English speakers not being able to reach the vowels. As when with the Vowel Cat, you pronounce the vowels, right? So it shows your voice. It shows your placement of vowel articulation on the chart. And we noticed that even some Americans could not reach the vowels as they are supposed to be in the chart. And so how do you deal with that?
Yeah, we noticed that also.
Because we have this. Yes.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
We used to use the visit pitch, which is something very similar, except it gives you the vowel chart in real time. Rather than having a processing delay. And it was great to be able to see, for example, the diphthongs moving in different directions as they happen. But yes, a lot of dialects don't actually wind up with the vowel where it's predicted to be, or it moves so much with in different contexts. Like, for example, we have the Great Lakes raising of the front vowels in something like, especially before nasal. So man. Yeah. We had a lot of trouble with that because is it black cat? Well, here it is way up in front and it never does hit where it is in the chart. So what do you do with that if you're teaching students and they say, but it sounds like yeah to me, not the of black cat.
And so how does this, is it the converse when we're talking about Edna's observation about the height of green? Are you saying, Edna, that some people, native speakers of North American English were somehow not getting quite up to E? Is that what you're saying? Maybe we've lost her.
The point, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Can you hear me? So the point is, when we teach vowel articulation, and then we say, model the vowels. This is how it's supposed to be. So you're teaching the students, this is where the vowel is supposed to be articulated, and this is the height, this is the position in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when you have the variation among native speakers, and
there we go.
Many of them cannot pronounce them as we have, let's say,
yeah, let me step in.
We, the researchers in the field, have come up with this
I think, Edna, one thing worth noting in this conversation that might help us both understand, I think Vowel Cat, in this, the way you're describing it, takes a prescriptive approach to saying, you know, what the ideal, you've used that word, I think, the ideal production of a particular sound
Is supposed to be.
is supposed to be. Whereas what we do with the color vowel chart and this whole, the color vowel approach to teaching takes a descriptive approach to look at ways that speakers of English, and I say that in the broadest sense, both native and non-native, ways that effective speakers of English communicate, and how the chart helps us talk about why that communication is successful. And then in the instances where there's communication breakdown, what happened. So in a sense, it's both a guide to achieve effective communication, and then it's also a resource to deconstruct what happened when there was a misunderstanding.
So I think if I can try to translate here, I think what's happening is that this chart should work for a teacher of any dialect of English, but if their students hear other dialects, you can say, oh yes, for example, right now I'm teaching with a speaker from, I'm co-teaching with a speaker from Mississippi. So when he says white tie, it doesn't go all the way up to the yeah.
He says white tie.
Sort of, yeah.
Kind of.
So we talked about that in class, and it said, listen to mine, white tie, you can imitate that. Now listen to Ben, and he'll say white tie, and it will be different, but it'll be in the same relative position, and you can say, oh look, it doesn't go all the way up. Or for example, if you say, if I say mayor, and somebody else says mayor, actually I say mayor, and somebody else says mayor, I said, well, I take a shortcut. Instead of going mayor, I go straight from A to and I just say mayor. So to me, the horse and the civic leader are the same.
Yeah, and let me use, I'm going to use a pen here to see if this will help us a bit. And so just as an example, and I think what we're doing here is building an example of how we take this descriptive approach that's very functional, is Robin can say, you know, here's white, or fire, okay?
And I start with olive, so white.
Okay.
I start all the way back
white, there. Fire. Yeah. And then others may come up and say something like fire. So
they might start with
fire. Okay, or others may come right up the middle, far, or far. There's a far out there. So for the word fire, F-I-R-E, these are all ways the word
in North America.
In North America, and we're able to simply chart it on the color vowel chart. And that, I think, would be a big philosophical difference between one approach and the other.
But what's important is that it's not that we want our students to imitate a particular dialect, but we want them to know what kind of variation is possible or acceptable, or at least will still be understandable to somebody else. So if I say fire and Ben says fire, we both understand it. But if one of my students says for, that's not going to work.
Right. So the mantra of the color vowel approach is, or the mantra, this is so beautiful about it. I say mantra and she says
tomato.
Mantra is that it's not about the one right answer. It's about the 2 or 3 right answers, right being defined as the ways that speakers of English say this word, and then the 13 or 12 wrong answers. That to say the word mantra or mantra cannot be moontra, and it cannot be meentra. Neither green nor blue are possible vowel sounds for that word. So it can be black or olive, mantra, mantra. It cannot be red. It starts to not be that word anymore, mentra.
So, for example, in my class just, last Thursday, one of my co-teachers brought in, we actually made French toast in class. It was very cool. It was LEA.
I want to be in your class.
we're putting together a cookbook. We had a Moroccan here yesterday. But anyway, so I said syrup, green tea syrup.
Yeah.
And she said, no, it's silver pin syrup. And then Ben said, no, it's purple shirt syrup. And and the students are saying, well, which one is it? And I said, well, they're all possible.
Yeah. So if you touch them, syrup, here's green tea. You can actually put your finger on the screen.
Yeah.
My mouse is disabled. Let me just get out of that for a second and come back in. Maybe it'll appear again.
I just want and that is they're all very close to each other.
Yes.
Yes.
The right way. There's a predictable way. And frankly, I think the strength of the Color Vowel Chart is it allows you to have a conversation without getting into some really deep phonetical discussion that students don't have.
That's right.
Concretely have that discussion about different dialects and still value them.
That's right. I think, and Cynthia, just so you know, your sound is fairly distorted. So I'm going to try to rephrase what you said, is that that's the strength of the Color Vowel Chart. It allows us to answer students' questions about different dialects without having to prioritize one as being better or more correct than the other. And at the same time, we can talk about, well, here's the majority, or say the most frequently heard ways of saying these words in this area, in this setting.
And you want, now that we have all this technology, you want to expose your students to as much acceptable variation as you can, so they don't go off saying, well, I can say anything, right? So there's a range that they have to figure out. You're right, Carrie. In Georgia, do you say debris or debris? Well, yes, there are places where you might put the accent on a different syllable. There are places in the United States where instead of saying umbrella, red dress, umbrella, it's cup of mustard, umbrella. So those are also variations that are possible, but people might not understand.
And I would say that what I've observed, and Robin can back this up probably more linguistically, but by and large, I think the mutual comprehensibility of North American Englishes, especially North American Englishes among themselves, is that while vowel color might change in a stressed syllable, the location of stress does not change. There are not many instances of words that change a great deal in terms of location of stress. And that also applies to Englishes around the world with more examples, but still very few exceptions. You know, garage, garage,
restaurant, it's a restaurant.
Right. So you'll find these words, but they are the minority. There are a small list of exceptions that stick out, to the point where garage, it's like the joke about the emphasis on the wrong syllable. I mean, we just memorize it quite quickly, that you've got garage here and garage over there. And you might take some adjusting to do, but for the most part, and I may be off when it comes to, maybe there's some Scottish Englishes where the stress really starts to shift. I'm not sure.
The vowels are more of a problem for me.
Okay, the vowels, but and so what's nice about what we're doing here is that we're still able to pin down a word and organize it. And again, we're coming back to the learner's needs. They need a way to organize spoken English. And alphabetization in a glossary format has had nothing to do with the way a word sounds. It has tricked our brains into thinking we're organizing things by alphabetizing them. And yet, if you look at a word wall with words in alphabetic order, that does almost nothing to help a student know how to pronounce those. And so the color vowel approach and pinning words down by their primary stressed vowel sound is the first system of its kind that allows learners to organize by the most conspicuous, the most defining sound of the word. Yeah.
And I also teach a class of native speakers of English who have speech issues, so that they have problems with pronunciation and they're dyslexic. And one of the things that I have them do is I have them pronounce the word, and if they say it differently, and since half of them are African American, they probably do, I have them cross it off the word wall that I provided them with and move it to a different place.
That's right.
So it depends what it is for you. Is this one purple for you, or is it
exactly
silver?
And so this phrase, this prepositional phrase of for you, for me, for you, for me, for those that have that are practicing the color vowel approach and that participate in my Color Vowel community, which is our private Facebook group, that is the way that we talk to one another, is not what's the correct pronunciation, but what color is this word for you? For me, it's this. For you, it's that. Ooh, we have somebody on video.
Yeah, that's Sin.
Yay, Sin. Great to see you. So let's return for a minute, and I still want more questions to make sure we had the debris question covered a little bit there. Carrie, does that
go up to there?
Okay.
Consistency. So why when you mix codes, General American and British English or other dialects, that's when things get confused. Yes, well, that's true. So I can only teach my own dialect, and you say that it's hard to teach a different code from your own. So that's what I tell non-native speaking teachers as well.
That's right.
Teach your own dialect, but expose your students to enough variation that, number one, they will be able to understand what people are saying to them, and number two, they will understand how much variation or what kind of variation is possible.
That's right.
In the local area, in the area that they're living in.
And more specifically, when we work with teachers, I don't even use the word dialect that much, because it raises lots of unnecessary hackles. Not even hackles, but just sort of like, ooh, I don't know.
That's
about
just a dialect. That's just a dialect. That's
right.
not a real language.
But we make the point, you can only teach English the way that you speak. And that might be that you speak in 5 different ways depending on whether you're at home.
I'm watching Sin nod because you've gone through this, right, Sin?
Yeah. So here, I'm going to unmute you. Hi.
Still not hearing her.
Ooh, we still don't hear you.
There we go.
Yes. Go ahead.
I've been fiddling with the sound to figure out if I can change the input and make the sound a little better. Yeah, I mean, going back to the consistency comment, right, I mean, when I struggle teaching can and can't, I almost did it, right? I have to keep constantly monitoring my own production. And it's much better to have a conversation about what the difference is. Particularly at Nova, we have students who have learned British English. Yeah. So they're already familiar with it. And it's sort of something we come up against. That it's better to have a conversation about it, and that you do want to be consistent, but you also don't want to be that prescriptive teacher and say, I mean, there is no one American accent. There is no one British accent. There is no one Australian accent. Maybe New Zealand because it's so tiny, but you have a big country, you're going to have that variation.
That's right.
So what we want is, this is what you can use this pronunciation and you will be understood. Okay. Exactly. I don't find that is confusing. If we said, so consistency in that respect is important.
That's right.
I agree. But if they picked any of those pronunciations, we would be fine with it.
And I find that once you're actually teaching with the chart, and I want to actually touch on Carrie's point here in a second, you'll find yourself with your own consistency. I think that's something beautiful about what the chart does for teachers, is to realize I do speak in my own internally consistent method. I mean, we all do. And you get to explore your own idiolect and see how similar it is to your colleagues. And you realize, we have a lot in common. Laura, one of our colleagues at the Color Vowel Chart, and I happen to share a great deal. Our intuitions are the same about whatever color a word is, and yet she's from Massachusetts and I'm from California, and so to be aware like that is its own gift for a language teacher.
Well, actually, getting back to the British system. Sin, you've been teaching using the North American chart all this time, even though you didn't have the extra vowel. So it's difficult because you needed an extra vowel to do this, and that's why we want this chart, because it's one thing to say, well, yes, there's variation. Some people say it this way, some people say it that way. But if you say, yes, I have a really strong distinction between Auburn and olive and tomato, that I need to be able to make clear in my dialect, and it's important to me, then you want to be able to teach that.
That's right.
And that's why
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Before having the British version, I could talk about the fact that I produce these sounds differently, but I had no colored. I forgot about the tomato cart. Like, I had no color
name for it.
title,
Yeah.
right?
So we've named the your vowel, and now you feel happy. Yes.
Yeah. No, and to have a home for Auburn phone.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this comment from Carrie. Sorry, I keep saying Caroline. She says, I try to do this with listening skills based on lessons using African English, Australian American, etc. So receptively, they're exposed to other codes and have to decode them.
Good. Yeah.
She says, this is a key difference here and leaves students open to being misunderstood here.
That's the can and can't.
Oh, I see. This is a different topic.
Yeah.
Okay. So so on that first bit, I'm always curious, when you say that you are exposing them to African English, Australian, and American, is that because it's in their environment that those are the Englishes they encounter and need to negotiate meaning with? Or is it a textbook? This is just, I'm just curious, maybe a textbook that would say, here's a generic ESL textbook for international students in whatever country, that simply exposes people for the sake of exposing them. I think those are two different things.
Yeah, I like them both.
Yeah.
Because if you're teaching English as a foreign language, you don't know where the people are, who they're going to be speaking with.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's an inauthenticity to a book that simply says, well, now I'm going to expose you to Indian English and Australian English and a West African English, when in your environment the only Englishes you use are York and surrounding areas and down to London. I mean, it's we need to be aware that the ear that we form to form accent tolerance or say accent flexibility to make sense of what we're hearing is a matter of the experiences we have. So I don't hear a lot of Scottish accents. And so if I come across, what is the movie, The Commitments, it takes me quite a bit of time to, it takes me 10 minutes to somehow assimilate it all and say, oh, I get this now. So it's just a thought as to what we do in our courses. We want to make sure it's what our students need. Any thoughts there, Carrie? Indian English is very important.
Lingua franca,
Yeah. And so the idea of as an exercise of exposing learners to different Englishes, of course, we all have to know that there are many Englishes and that they're all valid, and then also know that we have to train our ears maybe for the ones that we'll encounter most often. Or do encounter most often.
I'm going to have to think about that because I may not agree with that.
Okay, there we go.
Let's continue with some of the questions I have about are these the same vowel or not? Because I really need to. I really want to know.
So we have questions for you. So we've moved. Olive sock has become tomato cot, and olive sock American English has moved now to olive sock.
Olive sock, which is my Auburn dog. It's a low back rounded vowel.
Right.
It's sometimes written as an upside down A.
And then Auburn dog American English has become
Auburn fawn, which is the classic open O symbol. And these all have, this one has a long mark after it. I'm worried about length a little bit, but that's for further research. The Auburn fawn is a very close vowel. It's not as tense as O, but in many dialects, if you look at Jeff Lindsay's work, he's recorded a lot of different British English dialects, and he says that actually comes very close to the Minnesota O. So Auburn dog, I can't do it. Auburn fawn is what it sounds like to me. I'm doing it wrong because I'm diphthongizing it, but it's very close to the high vowel. Because sorry, go ahead.
No, Jeff Lindsay is spelled
Geoff.
There we go.
Sorry,
I just put that in the chat there for you. Sorry.
Yeah,
Jeff with Geoff Lindsay.
So I like his approach better than John Wells's simply because he has. I think it meshes nicely with the Color Vowel Chart. John Wells is a more phonemic system, but the John Wells phonetic sets or phonemic sets is what Longman Pronouncing Dictionary uses and what a lot of other textbooks use. And so our students come to us with what I consider kind of a distorted idea of what these vowels actually sound like. So the issue of vowel length, for example, is problematic to me because in most cases, the vowel length actually comes from the existence of a semivowel like a Y or a W after the sound, or an R that used to be there that has dropped out, but the rhythm preserves the length that used to be there. So that's what I'm getting at here.
So I think we should mention, I think Robin's going super deep. I want you to know she's looking at notes that involve a ton of transcription. And so she's going deeper than what you're looking at allows you.
So this is my disclaimer, okay? I'm saying, I'm not following the Longman Pronouncing Dictionary, even though many of our students do.
There we go.
I'm not happy with the students, I'm not happy with the training that a lot of my students in teaching pronunciation have had if they come from other countries and have learned that the only difference between ship and sheep is that sheep is long and ship is short. And when I tell them, no, ship is not the same as sheep, they said, but my dictionary says so.
Right.
And I said, your dictionary is wrong. And they said, I've been teaching from China for 20 years, and I have to,
All right, Robin, we're going to do a separate webcast on dictionary transcriptions, okay? So back to the very good question about fear.
Oh, yeah.
So fear. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. So interesting things. I have something about
what do we
that
do
here.
about fear? Just show us on the chart here.
So we start, this is something that is really interesting because, again, this is the issue with the purple shirt versus cup of mustard. So can I get this? Can you see this mouse? Can they see the mouse?
They can see the mouse.
So the classic transcription of here is with an E. Crap! I'm sorry.
Here, it's all right. Robin's excited, and I'm going to say to Carrie.
It's a technical term.
Exactly. It's black cat crap. So Carrie's about to go, and yes, we're recording this, and I'll be emailing it to the folks, including you, who registered for this webinar. We probably will not be making this, fully public YouTube kind of thing, because it really is our internal dialogue. And thank you for your time and for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Yeah. So if I'm doing, I better not push this. Yeah. So if I'm doing green tea, then followed by cup of mustard, that's the same as if I were doing in American English. Fear, ear, and maybe ear going up to the Y, fear, and then fia. So it's considered a triphthong in many transcription systems. So so 3 places, but to me it's 2 syllables. So
we get a fear,
or fear. So the older pronunciation, if you're very posh, would be fia. We have nothing to fia.
Nothing to fia.
Yeah. But a more modern pronunciation would be start lower at silver pin, fia. And in fact, there's something called smoothing that is happening in Southern British English, where you just skip the diphthong altogether and you just make it long, fi, so that the word his, if I said it in American English, his, very long, his, that would be, or his, it needs to be a little higher, that would be interpreted if I were British as hears.
Oh, okay.
He hears it.
He hears it. He hears it.
He hears it. Isn't that mind-blowing? It is for me. How do you hear that, Sin?
Yeah, he hears it. He hears it.
He hears it. Yeah. So his and his are minimal pairs, one short, one long, except that here has this, abstract floating R in it. So I'm thinking about ways to teach something like that, the R drop, thinking, okay, here here, going from I to but if you're dropping the R, then it drops down to so here, and then some people just make it long here and never move it at all.
So here's a question though. Just because his, is a different kind of word than here, that his is probably going to be reduced in that.
Yes, yeah.
Good point.
I was listening to a tape where an American speaker was saying, it's because his something, and he was kind of and he was misinterpreted by somebody else as saying here's. That's British. Right. So that's where I say, okay, well, that's cool. All right.
Was neat.
I want to go back to Olive Sock.
We have about 2 minutes before we want to wrap up.
Okay. So do they have the same vowel, olive and sock? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
How about Auburn fawn? Oh, sorry, Auburn fawn.
Auburn fawn. Yes.
Yes.
They have the same sound. Good.
Okay. Question. Where do you put orange door?
Is orange? It's screwed up for me.
No, it's door. Olive and then olive for orange and then fawn for door.
Right. Orange door.
Yeah. So those are in different places. So we can't use that.
Yeah.
Now rose is an interesting interesting problem because most of the British, a few dialects don't, but most of them have a diphthong here, not starting at O and going up to W, but starting either in mustard, so O, or even further forward, O, and that's very much like our Baltimore.
Yep, there's the
O. So rose, boat.
O.
Or rose, coat.
Yeah. O.
The question I have is, what do you do before an R? Like if I were going to say more, would that be rose or would that be fawn?
It would be Auburn because it's more.
More.
I
Okay.
want more chocolate.
And where would you put MOOR?
Same thing, more.
Okay, so it's not because an older version would be mua or muh, but now it's moved down to
Australian version. Yeah, more.
No, this is what apparently the non-posh, even RP now does that. And how about
Australians are definitely non-posh.
MOWER, mower?
Huh?
Like a lawnmower.
Mower.
Oh, you have two syllables. Okay.
Mower.
In Southern English, there's smoothing, so instead of mow, it just winds up being more, which explains why when somebody was talking about Camilla as Prince Charles's paramour, somebody transcribed it as power mower. You remember that?
Oh my God, yes.
So mower and more and moor all come out as Auburn fawn.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there's a corollary there. This is coming back to Shirley, who's not with us today. Of her husband, they just did a big renovation in their home, and so there's this big discussion about where's the towel? Where's the towel?
Is that tile or towel?
Right. And so it came down that he was talking about the towel, but they had just finished tiling the bathroom, and there's always a little extra so that you can have extra for fixing cracked tiles.
Yeah.
She's sort of exasperated at the moment because why are you looking for the tiles? We need to go to this show. She's looking for the towel to get out of the shower. So there's towel and towel. Is that similar?
It's
what they call smoothing?
Yeah. Same with Texas fire instead of fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Fire. Smoothing. My new favorite term.
Yeah.
So hey, we've been talking for over an hour.
Oh gosh.
It's been wonderful having everybody, but we try not to, talk the whole day.
I want to send a questionnaire out.
We are going to send a questionnaire out.
And I have many questions that maybe you can make them optional, but I really want to know.
Right.
Like, what about these R's? What do I do with purple shirt and cup of mustard? And so like nurse, for me it's purple shirt, but according to the transcriptions, it's Schwa. It's cup of mustard. Nurse.
Nurse. Yeah. For me, it's more purple. Nurse.
Rounded. Yeah.
Yeah. Nurse.
But they had nurse.
Yeah.
So what I'm finding listening to this dialogue is I'm watching you mouse around on the chart, and I'm finding that the chart is serving its function.
That's true.
It's allowing for a conversation, and you're not
exactly.
We're not finding ourselves in an answer where it says, "Well, none of this works for me."
And in fact,
right?
Sin, I'm thinking that whatever that vowel was that we were having problems with before, was it syrup or something you said was almost blue?
Oh, what was it?
What was that? I don't remember now.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Yeah.
It was not syrup. It was something else.
It was something, yeah.
I'm thinking it's the version of purple shirt that is in the cup of mustard. So it's a rounded schwa of some kind.
Yeah. And so essentially the questionnaire that we'll be sending out, and this is a good way to wrap up, we'll get into two essential questions. The first one we kind of covered here, but we'll cover again, is listen and say each of these phrases aloud, green and tea. Do they in fact contain the same vowel sound? And so we'll be asking a lot of different speakers to identify.
And are they different from the other vowel sounds?
Well, that's the second question. And so then, is each of these colors unique and distinct and not overlapping in any way with any of the others? And that's the question about purple shirt and a cup of mustard.
Yeah.
Is for some speakers, purple shirt a cup of mustard?
Yeah, certainly for me, no. Okay. Purple shirt certainly is no. And
I can see
mustard
surrounding, yeah.
We're hoping the answer is no.
Well, but for some people it might be, but we can accommodate that. But yeah.
And they're right next to each other. That's why they're right next to each other.
That's very convenient.
But for example, would there see the gray line that we have here in Olive and Auburn?
Were there be people who merge those?
Are there people for whom this is a consistent merge? So I'm the Californian who doesn't perceive Auburn. Is there the person who simply doesn't perceive purple as distinct from a cup of mustard? That'll be an interesting question.
Yeah. Except when they have to link it to something else. So HER, her, what is it? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So those are rapple.
Yes.
Her rapple, her pear. I don't know.
Her pear.
You tell me.
Yeah. So watch for that. Basically, anybody who registered for the webinar is getting a link to this recorded webinar, and it also means that now I can be in touch with you because you were interested in the Color Vowel Chart and the British Color Vowel Chart. As I've sort of made pretty clear in these images, this is just a prototype. It's not something that we're publishing immediately, but I could see with a bit more testing that we would be able to put out the launch pad possibly with the British chart on it.
I think at least it could spark enough conversation the way the North American vowel chart does. We might want to have a list of words besides the ones here that are so the Wells
exemplars.
Yeah. Right. This what I'm calling it. I'm calling purple everything in these categories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then my final question would be, if the British chart were available, Sin, for you and Claire Schneider, who's a South African British expat who teaches in New Mexico, for folks like you, Commonwealth speakers of English who are living in the United States, would you switch or would you stick with the North American chart?
Great question. I would probably use both.
Ooh.
Here's why. I would probably
put one in your classroom.
Yeah. Here's why. And I fight this all the time. It drives me nuts that this perception, and it really comes from American teachers and some students in the US, but really it's the teachers driving this point. They're here to learn American English. No, they're not. They're here to learn English, and there's more than one kind of English. So I would say I would lead with the American because we're in situ, but when I'm talking about differences, like I said before, when I was looking at Olive Sock and Auburn and Dog, I didn't have the cute little phrase in color.
Tomato cot.
Talking about how a difference. Right. Tomato cot. Right.
The raspberry cot.
So, and particularly, again, I was just in Brazil and they use American English, so I wouldn't use it there. But certainly at Nova, when you've got people that have come from that British dialect training,
yeah, absolutely,
I value that. It's about valuing what they have.
Oh, I like the way you're putting that. So we can give that to people who already have learned a British dialect system, except that this chart is going to be much more pronounceable than the phonetic symbols that they've learned from their dictionary.
That's
so
right.
that I actually like that idea, because it wouldn't just be used, in countries that in environments where British English is spoken. Could also be used on people who were trained on British English in whatever country they had. Say, okay, this is your chart, and you can use it, but notice that, for example, E is a diphthong and not just a long version of I.
Yeah.
Right.
And to realize, when I think about students' stories, to think of a narrative, and this is hypothetical, but entirely possible, of the student who says, I studied British English in my country, and then I came to the United States, and I really felt that I took a big step backward, and it took me a long time to recover. That's the kind of story that a student can believe.
Yeah.
Because
you don't speak English right over here.
And there's no valuing, but there's not been a valuing of the things that they've raised their attention to.
Yes.
Right.
This dialogue has really come down.
I like the way you're putting that. Yeah, I would definitely, I would love to have a launch pad in each version.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and possibly an overview of the different charts. Now we have 3. So we have the Western and the North American.
That's true. Yeah. So rehabilitate the Western orange door one, and value your dialect as well.
That's right.
So I
keep going back and forth of totally preferring it and then ignoring it. Hey, it's fun.
I mean, it just one final point. The point I was making just last week was that, it's not just like we were talking about, your name is your name, but you need to be able to understand that it could be pronounced differently in English. The stress could shift, the vowel could change, so that if someone's calling out to you, you know that they're actually referring to you. And so it's about valuing both, I guess, right? But it can sound different.
Having one foot in one and one foot in the other and standing firm, right?
Oh, that's a nice metaphor.
Wonderful. Oh, Cynthia, thank you to
we're going to ski down the chart, ski down the slopes with this.
And Lenore, thanks to all of you, and as well as
thank you, Edna and Carrie, for
joining us.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again, but watch for an email from me in the next 24 hours or so with a link, maybe 48 hours.
And also
to some kind of a survey.
Send it to your British-speaking friends.
We really want to get this sent out, far and wide. Soon and far and wide. All right. Big and fast. All right. Be well. Have a great day. Great day. Fabulous time with your Auburn phone. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Cheers.